Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We are doing the predictions and breakdown of UFC 294, the rematch pay-per-view with Volkanovski versus Makhachev. This is the first fight on the prelims. It is Shara Magomedov versus Bruno Silva. This is backhand, and my pick is Shara Magomedov. Lousy's pick is also Shara Magomedov, and we both are in agreement that this fight is not going to go all 3 rounds. We have 2 killers. Bruno Silva, who he's got 7 fights in the UFC. 6 out of the 7 don't go the distance. So he's only had 1 decision out of 7 fights in the UFC. So he's a killer be killed type fighter. And we got Shara Magomedov, who's an absolute killer himself. He has not fought in the UFC yet. However, he is the favorite. He's minus $250 to profit $100 on Shara Magomedov. And interestingly enough, he is undefeated, 11-0, and he's got 10 knockouts. No submissions, so it should end in a knockout. Shara Magomedov, the reason that we were going with him is kind of crazy. I mean, he's big for the division. He looks big at 185 pounds, and he's just knocking people out. He's knocking people down with jabs. I mean, the guy he's got phenomenal kicks, spinning back kicks to the head, to the body. He's kind of got the all-around arsenal as far as striking. So for him, it's a great matchup because Bruno Silva is a killer be killed guy who just goes forward. He's a fast starter in the first round. So we're actually kind of expecting a first round KO for Shara Magomedov. So maybe if that's a good price, we're going to go with that maybe. But yeah, I mean, normally, you want to give credit to the veteran of 7 fights in the UFC, Bruno Silva. However, Bruno Silva is there to be hit in his last fight with Brendan Allen. It was much of the same where he's just spotty, like he'll come forward, and if he misses you, then he leaves his head completely wide open to get hit, and that's what he did in his last fight. He got finished in his last fight, submitted by Brendan Allen. And so, when you're doing things like this and you're up and down, and then somebody like Shara Magomedov, who's undefeated with a 90, 95%, whatever it is, 92% knockout rate, comes in with a better arsenal, better timing with his strikes. He can kick and punch. He can do everything from countering to going forward to jabbing you and making you get knocked down with a jab. So he's super dangerous, big for the weight class, and we just think Bruno Silva gets into too much danger too often. But the bet ultimately for us both is we want to definitely bet it going inside the distance, that it won't go 3 rounds. So thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And for that YouTube algo, thank you so much, everybody. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We are breaking down and predicting UFC 294 Volkanovski Makhachev. This is the second fight on the prelims. It's Viktoriia Dudakova versus Jinh Frey at strawweight, 115 pounds. And Viktoriia Dudakova is a minus 550 favorite, 550 to make $100. Lousy's pick is Viktoriia Dudakova, tentatively, of course. And this is backhand. My pick is Jinh Frey. Only reason it's a tentative pick for Jinh Frey for me is that both of these fighters have pillow hands, basically. So I see it going all 3 rounds. So that's really what the bet is going to be for me. And even Lousy is also favoring a bet for going all 3 rounds because of the pillow hands. On top of that, even though Viktoriia Dudakova, this is her second fight in the UFC, and she is undefeated, 7-0, and she's got 4 submissions with 2 TKOs, but the last fight was a TKO, but it was a freak accident. What happened was she was taking down Istela Nunes, and Istela Nunes on the takedown, I think she braced for impact, and then her left arm, the elbow, just broke. It just was hanging. So it just got stopped by a freak accident. Ultimately, Viktoriia Dudakova, even though she is the favorite in this fight, and she's undefeated 7-0, in the Contender Series fight she had 2 fights ago, it was a decision, and then this was a freak accident. So in reality, we can really take from the Maria Silva fight, which was 2 fights ago, it was a decision, and Viktoriia Dudakova, she's got good, she really just body locks against the fence. She just grabs the body and tries to drag you down, or does like a fancy trip takedown. like a hip toss. She doesn't really have a standard, go for your one single leg or drag you, or go for your two legs, your double leg, and then drag you down. She doesn't do that. She kind of rushes you against the fence, and she does fence work, and then she just kind of hip tosses you down. She's very good at it, but she doesn't really have a consistent way to bring you down in the open space. She's got to get you against the fence. So the thing is, also when she gets on top of you, when she does get you to the ground, with that hip toss against the fence, she has a problem with top control. Like, she's really easy for Maria Silva 2 fights ago was easily able to get her off within like 10, 15, 20 seconds of Dudakova having her down. It was easily able to get Dudakova off of her every time in all the rounds. So Dudakova's top control is not good, and because of that, even though if she does in this fight with Jinh Frey, if Viktoriia Dudakova takes Jinh Frey down, I really see Jinh Frey being competent on the ground to easily get back up, like easily, because Viktoriia Dudakova, like I just said, does not have any top control. So it's going to be a messy fight. Viktoriia Dudakova is going to be trying to get her to the fence and then get her down. Jinh Frey is going to get back up. Jinh Frey is going to maybe hit her a little bit more than Dudakova hits Frey. So that's why I'm thinking my tentative pick is Jinh Frey. Listen, if they're going to give me plus $100 to profit $400 on Jinh Frey, and Jinh Frey is the veteran who's been in the UFC for about 7 fights, and she is 2-5. However, she's got experience and she can make it an ugly fight. Dudakova, though, it makes sense her being the favorite. Ultimately, we're thinking it's going to be a back and forth fight. Dudakova, obviously probably wins, but minus 550, that price, 550 to profit 100 is just ridiculous. Going the distance makes sense. Again, they both have pillow hands, and on top of that, Dudakova does not have any top control, so Jinh Frey, as the UFC experienced veteran, will be able to get back up rather easily, and then it's just going to be on the feet a little bit, on the ground a little bit, against the fence. Going to be a messy, greasy fight, and that's why I'm thinking maybe take a small little bet on Jinh Frey. If that, really my major bet is going to be going all 3 rounds, going the distance. Appreciate you all listening. Appreciate the support. Please like, subscribe, and comment for that algo. Thank you. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We are predicting and breaking down UFC 294, Volkanovski, Makhachev. This fight is between Nathaniel Wood and Mohammad Naimov at featherweight, 145 pounds. This is backhand. My pick is Nathaniel Wood. Lousy's pick is also Nathaniel Wood. The reason he was saying it was because Nathaniel Wood is just quicker, and he's just got that more talent, with the counter punching. And absolutely, I totally agree with that. Nathaniel Wood is a guy who has moved up from 135 pounds, and now he's at 145 pounds featherweight, and he's 3-0 here. And he's beaten really good fighters. He's beaten Charles Rosa, Charles Jourdain, and Andre Fili in a row. Not only that, but in his last fight versus Andre Fili, Nathaniel Wood knocked him down in the first round. So Nathaniel Wood's power is still good as he's moved up against bigger opponents. On top of that, Nathaniel Wood has the speed over Mohammad Naimov in this matchup. Nathaniel Wood also has the counterpunching ability, whereas Mohammad Naimov is a little bit more of a kicker. He likes to kind of load up on his kicks, and he does punch here and there, but he does a lot of flashy spinning kicks, and they're not very effective, though, is the problem. He only has 1 fight in the UFC, and it's against Jamie Mullarkey. Mohammad Naimov did TKO Jamie Mullarkey, but that's because Jamie Mullarkey is a solid fighter, and Jamie Mullarkey in the UFC, he's had some wins, but Jamie Mullarkey just went forward against Naimov, and he didn't throw a punch, and I think he was kind of indecisive. Should I go for the takedown? So he kind of level changed, went down. Should I go for the takedown? Should I not? And then Naimov just was like, all right, here's a short punch, counter punch, and just knocked down Jamie Mullarkey. So Jamie Mullarkey paid the price for not throwing a punch while going right next to Naimov. And that's how Naimov got the knockout against Jamie Mullarkey. His only fight in the UFC is, Jamie Mullarkey just walked into his punch, honestly. But ultimately, Naimov has a pretty good record, 9-2. He's got some decisions, got some TKOs, got some submissions, so he's a well-rounded fighter overall. But in the UFC, just ultimately, Naimov is a guy who is pretty fast at backing out, so relatively defensive, and then he just kind of loads up on his kicks, so it's really easy to see those spinning kicks coming, and ultimately, like he favors the kicks. So Nathaniel Wood is an expert at reading any sort of a strike, whether it's a leg kick or a normal kick or a punch. So Nathaniel Wood is very fast as far as his speed. He's much faster than Naimov. He reads the shots much better than Naimov as far as like what strikes are going to come at you. He's very fast at reading those. And then on top of that, Nathaniel Wood can leg kick you, and he's also got really good boxing combinations, and he has a really good high guard where he's got good defense. And on top of that, he has no load up on his counterpunches. So we were just saying that Naimov loads up on his kicks. It's easy to see coming. Nathaniel Wood, you literally do not see the punch coming. When he counterpunches you, he doesn't like load up at all. There is no load up. It's almost like Max Holloway, the former champion at featherweight, where there's just no load up on his punches. Nathaniel Wood has no load on his counterpunch, so it's like a flash. You don't see it coming, and it's the punches that you don't see coming are the ones that knock you down and knock you out, and that's why he got a knockdown versus Andre Fili. Andre Fili was trying to feel him out, trying to throw some punches, and Nathaniel Wood out of nowhere, just boom, no load up counterpunch, and just knocked down Andre Fili, which is the bigger man. So Nathaniel Wood is showing, to me, he looks like a top 10 candidate, like at 145 pounds. He's beaten Charles Jourdain, who's another guy who's a really good fighter. Andre Fili, who's like top 15. And Naimov, I just don't believe is on the level. Now, the one thing that Naimov have over Nathaniel Wood is the kicks. So even though Nathaniel Wood has a good leg kick and a pretty fast leg kick, Naimov's is just maybe a little bit faster and definitely a little bit harder. However, Naimov is naturally the bigger guy, so we're expecting that. But Nathaniel Wood is great at reading leg kicks, and he's very fast. So he should be able to dodge those leg kicks. He should be able to have the high defense, so he doesn't really get hit with any kicks or punches, and he's very fast at reading the shots. Naimov is too predictable with his load up on his kicks. Nathaniel Wood should be able to wait for the counters and just be the faster man and just control the fight, really. And so Nathaniel Wood is minus 340 to make 100. The pick is Nathaniel Wood. That's what my bet is going to be. Is just betting him straight up. Even though it is a relatively expensive price, I believe the style matchup really, really favors Nathaniel Wood because of his speed, his counterpunching ability with no load, and the fact that he can read Naimov's kicks coming from a mile away, which is Naimov's only real weapon here. So it's just Naimov is going to be neutralized in this matchup, and Nathaniel Wood should have a cruise to an easy win in this fight, in my opinion. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. Thank you so much for joining us. We are breaking down and predicting UFC 294, Volkanovski versus Makhachev. This is a fight between Mike Breeden and Anshul Jubli. And this is at lightweight, 155 pounds. This is backhand. My pick tentatively is Anshul Jubli, and Lousy's pick is also Anshul Jubli. We both believe that Anshul Jubli is just a better fighter. He's minus $380 to make 100. So he's pretty expensive. He is undefeated, 7-0, and he's had one fight in the UFC where he got a TKO. But that TKO, we both believe that fight was actually prematurely stopped. It was an early stoppage. He did take his opponent down and was doing ground and pound, but he didn't really do any damage, and it was just hitting the opponent, Jeka Sarag. It was just hitting Sarag's glove. And so I think the ref just was looking at the punches. He wasn't seeing where it was landing, that it was just hitting the glove of the opponent, and then he just stopped the fight. But ultimately, there was just 1 minute and 16 seconds left in that second round, and if that would have, if he would have gotten out of it, which I'm sure he would have, Jubli has pillow hands, then it would have gone to the third round, and then it would have gone the distance. So ultimately, even though Anshul Jubli is undefeated, 7-0, he only has one fight in the UFC, and I believe it should have gone the distance, but but he got a TKO because the ref early stopped that fight. So ultimately, Anshul Jubli has pillow hands. Mike Breeden, his opponent in this fight, has pillow hands. And so that's why I believe this fight is going the distance. And so that's what my bet's going to be, is going all 3 rounds. Mike Breeden is 10-6. And the problem with him is that he has had 3 fights in the UFC, and he's lost all of them. So, he's lost 1 by decision, and he's lost 2 of them by KO. But the KOs are against Terrence McKinney, who literally is a knockout machine, who literally kills everyone in the first round, or he gets killed in the first round, but he's just a really good fighter that kills people in the first round. And same thing happened here. Mike Breeden got knocked out in his last fight versus McKinney in 1 minute 25 seconds in the first round. And then 3 fights ago, he got KO'd by Alexander Hernandez in the first round in 1 minute 20 seconds. Now, Alexander Hernandez and Terrence McKinney, the reason Mike Breeden got knocked out so quickly in those fights is because Alexander Hernandez and Terrence McKinney they like to go forward and they like to throw with good power. Now Anshul Jubli, Mike Breeden's current opponent for this fight, he does go forward, but he does put pressure, but he's a wrestler. He doesn't double leg or single leg you. He just puts pressure on you, has pillow hands, and then he just body locks you against the fence, drags you down, things like that. So, and he doesn't do any damage on top. So Mike Breeden should be able to basically neutralize that because he did a good job stuffing the takedowns in his 2 fights ago versus Nathan Levy. And Mike Breeden had a fine time just stopping the takedowns, especially in the 3rd round when you think Mike Breeden might get tired. He kept stuffing those takedowns, meaning blocking those takedown attempts, the wrestling. So he should do just fine against Anshul Jubli as far as stopping the takedowns. And even if he does get taken down, he should be competent on the ground where Jubli doesn't have any power, like we said. He's got pillow hands. Mike Breeden also has pillow hands. This fight's definitely going the distance. Mike Breeden's a little bit hesitant too. He just doesn't throw enough punches to knock out Jubli and have a puncher's chance. So this is definitely going all 3 rounds in our minds. And that's what the bet is eventually going to be. I mean, the tentative pick is Anshul Jubli, but the bet is going to be going all 3 rounds, going the distance. Appreciate you all listening, and thank you so much again. And please like, subscribe, and comment for that YouTube algo. Thank you. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We are predicting and breaking down UFC 294 Volkanovski Makhachev 2, and this is a fight between Abu Azaitar versus Sedriques Dumas. My pick tentatively is Abu Azaitar, and Lousy's pick is also Abu Azaitar. We just believe he's the better kickboxer. He comes forward. He likes to really throw a lot. He's very exciting to watch. He's like, I'm a fan now after doing the research on him. And only reason I don't want to bet him right away, I want to try and do a live bet on him, is because last fight, which was 2 years ago, he actually lost by KO. And it wasn't because he wasn't a good enough fighter. It was because he started gassing out. Like, he literally was tiring after just midway through the 2nd round only. So that leads me to believe that maybe he's going through injury problems. There's a lot of different factors where he can't do the cardio training he needs to do. It doesn't have maybe the knees or his back is hurting or something like that. He's going through injuries where he just can't train well. So for us, we're both thinking Abu Azaitar. However, we want to see him get into that 3rd round, the last round, and look good, as far as his health. His opponent, Sedriques Dumas, is 8-1. And he is 2-1 in the UFC, including a win over Cody Brundage in his last fight. Sedriques Dumas' specialty really is that he is good at takedown defense, and he's good against grapplers. That's kind of what his specialty is. He doesn't have too much defense against striking. He punches on the run. He leaps in with some combos, but he's not very accurate with his punches. He just kind of throws the punches to throw them. He's pretty talented as far as his footwork and things like that, but again, his specialty is really defending against grapplers, and Abu Azaitar is obviously not a grappler. He's a K1 kickboxer. That's why Lousy likes him too in this fight, is that Abu Azaitar is an experienced kickboxer. He is 37 years old. He's been in the game for a long time, and it shows, man. He just has he throws a lot of winging punches, exciting fighter, rips to the body with some like big punches to the body, kicks. He's just an all-around great kickboxer. It's fun to watch him fight. But like we said, so if Sedriques Dumas and Abu Azaitar get into a striking match, which is very probable, it is going to happen. Dumas is a little bit faster, but Azaitar definitely is there to strike and hit and trade, exchange. He stands close to his opponent. He has great dirty boxing with his uppercuts when he's close to his opponent. And I think his counterpunching is not the greatest, so if he gets backed up, it's not great. But he goes forward so often, it's almost like he doesn't need to counterpunch. You know what I mean? He's just going forward, and it's going to be interesting to see if he gasses or doesn't gas in the 3rd round. That's why this is going to be a live bet for me. And I want to see him look good in the 3rd round. I think it might be a close fight going into the 3rd. So ultimately, he is the underdog. So it's going to be probably a decent price, maybe $100 to make $150 in that 3rd round. And I'm just going to be patient on this fight. No reason to rush it. It's been 2 years out of the octagon again, where his last fight he lost by TKO by Marc-Andre Barriault in that 3rd round when he was gassing. And, it was 2 years before that fight, too. So it looks like he's been going through these injuries where he's injured for a couple years, and then he takes a fight and he's injured again, and then he's out for 2 years. So it's a little bit dangerous to bet on him too early. So I'm going to wait on this fight with Abu Azaitar. Thank you so much for listening, and appreciate it. And please like, subscribe, comment. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We are breaking down and predicting UFC 294, Volkanovski, Makhachev 2. This fight is between Javid Basharat versus Victor Henry at bantamweight, 135 pounds. This is backhand. My tentative pick is Javid Basharat, and so is Lousy's. He's also picking Javid Basharat. Javid Basharat is undefeated, 14-0 with 11 finishes. However, Javid Basharat, in reality, he's 3-0 in the UFC, and they're all decisions. All three are decisions. And it's for a reason. He's got pillow hands, and his opponent, Victor Henry, in this fight also has pillow hands. So guess what? What we do when that happens is we're betting on it going the distance. That's what we are doing. Basharat is also minus $550 to profit $100. So it's a little bit ridiculous, but he is 14-0. Whereas Victor Henry is 23-6. So not the greatest record. However, Victor Henry is 2-1 in the UFC, and his only losses to Rafael Assunção, who is a perennial top 10 ranked fighter at bantamweight, 135 pounds. So, Victor Henry, what he's shown is that he's a decision fighter as well. All three fights he's had in the UFC has gone to decision. So, further evidence that it's going to decision. It's kind of funny because in this fight, it's not going to be very entertaining, I'll be honest. Javid Basharat and Victor Henry, they have pillow hands, and on top of that, they don't really like to throw with. They're not active. They don't throw that many punches. Even if it says, Victor Henry is throwing 8 significant strikes landed per minute, it's just not true. I mean, the strikes are not significant at all. Javid Basharat at 5.6 significant strikes landed per minute. It's just, again, not true. They're not throwing with any heat. And in reality, what they're doing is, I think what they're forgetting is that they're throwing a lot of fake punches. That's what the stats aren't saying. Javid Basharat and Victor Henry throw a lot of fake punches, meaning just punches that are just no power whatsoever on them. And they're not even intending to actually land and hurt. They're intending just to get the opponent to draw a counterpunch out of the opponent. And so that's their game. Victor Henry and Javid Basharat are actually very similar. It's almost like they, are trained from the same, team, because the way they fight is a lot of feints, a lot of, stuttering, a lot of fake punches to draw out a big punch from the opponent, and then they just back up and let the opponent just drain down his gas tank, and then Javid Basharat and Victor Henry start turning it up in the second and really more in the third round. So they're both of their strategies are the same. They try and gas their opponents out. So super boring to watch when they're going to do it to each other. You know what I mean? So I'm expecting a snooze fest. I'm expecting both of them to just try and do all these feints and act like they're going to punch, but not really punch. And it's just going to be boring. But it's a great way to for a bet for us for going the distance, going all 3 rounds. And that's ultimately what we think it's going to be. The stats say it. We've seen it with our eyes. And now hopefully we can get some money with it, knowing with that knowledge. So appreciate you all listening to this breakdown of Javid Basharat versus Victor Henry. Again, the pick is tentatively Javid Basharat, but they're both doing the same thing. They're just throwing a lot of feints and fake punches, and they're not committing to anything because they're just trying to gas their opponents out. So we're betting on it going the distance. Thanks. Like, subscribe, and comment, please, for that YouTube algo. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. Appreciate you for joining us. We're breaking down UFC 294 Volkanovski Makhachev 2, and this fight is between Mohammad Yahya versus Trevor Peek. Trevor Peek is a slight favorite, minus 145, $145 to profit 100. And that is Lousy's pick is Trevor Peek tentatively, and the reason for that is Trevor Peek swings with everything. He throws the kitchen sink at you every single time. Even when he has you hurt, he's loading up on his punch or his kick and just loads up on it, and even if he has you hurt, he's doing the same thing. He loads up on it. He doesn't want to take advantage when you're hurt. He just keeps loading up on his punches. It's crazy. I've never seen a guy who loads up on everything. So for me, my tentative pick is also Trevor Peek. However, for me, there's a double chance bet. That's what I'm going to be most likely doing if the price is right. And I like to wait for after weigh-ins on Friday to do that if the price is right, where you can on DraftKings, we use DraftKings, and you know, you can go to the fight lines where, you know, you can, that's the normal bets. There's a tab next to it called Double Chance, and then there's winning method, and then in that there is double chance. There's alternate double chance. Alternate double chance is cool because you can literally bet on both fighters. So you can say Trevor Peek by KO and then Muhammad Yahya by decision, and that's one bet, you know, so either one of those things can happen and I would win the bet. That's what I see happening. Trevor Peek either KOs his opponent. He's 8-1 with 8 KOs. It's kind of crazy. So it's all or nothing with him. And the thing is, though, is that Muhammad Yahya doesn't have the power, though, to really knock him out. So in Trevor Peek's last fight, he's 1-1 in the UFC, and he had his first loss of his career against Chepe Mariscal, and it was a decision loss because Trevor Peek, you know, even though he had him hurt here and there, it's just he just loads up on everything, doesn't take advantage of anything, and he's just hoping that he just keeps loading up and then things hit, and then, you know, you can just knock you out type of a thing. But in the UFC, you got to, you know, mix up your paces. You can't just, you know, load up and take a whole second to throw a punch every time. Sometimes you got to throw, you know, a quicker punch to just, you know, just hit him again and then keep him rocked, right? So Trevor Peek doesn't do that. His IQ is actually quite low. Unfortunately, that's why, you know, we're both thinking that he's kind of a liability. So Lousy was thinking, even though his pick is Trevor Peek, that for him, he wants to see a live bet. He wants to live bet Trevor Peek. He wants to wait and see if Trevor Peek can get taken down by Muhammad Yahya. Because if Muhammad Yahya can just basically duck under the punches and take down Trevor Peek, it's kind of tough for Trevor Peek to do anything. But then again, if he can't, then Trevor Peek will knock out Muhammad Yahya. And I have to, it makes sense to me as well. Now, Muhammad Yahya is, his record is solid, 12-3. He's, you know, he's got 9 finishes on his record. So, you know, solid record, but, you know, but this is his first fight in the UFC, you know, so we haven't seen much, you know, we just saw some stuff on YouTube with him. And the thing is that, we just don't know much. We do know that he stands too close. He's there to be leg kicked, there to be hit. And, you know, he's there to be countered, you know, so Trevor Peek is the kind of guy who can welcome him to the UFC with a KO. We'll see. But ultimately, the tentative pick is Trevor Peek for both me and Lousy. However, it's a wait and see to live bet to see if Muhammad Yahya can take him down. And for me, I just want to maybe do a double chance bet, Trevor Peek by KO, Muhammad Yahya by decision, because that's basically how Trevor Peek fights. So thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment for the YouTube algo. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We are breaking down and predicting a Volkanovski Makhachev 2, and this fight is between Tim Elliott versus Muhammad Mokaev at flyweight, 125 pounds. Mokaev and Tim Elliott, they're ranked number 11 and number 12. And Mokaev is the favorite in this fight, minus $450 to profit 100. He is undefeated, and he's got 4 fights in the UFC. He's got 3 submissions out of 4 fights. So, and then the other fight with Charles Johnson was a decision. So he is a submission machine, and he's a grappler. And Tim Elliott is also a grappler. So in my opinion, either Mokaev gets the submission or it's going the distance all 3 rounds. Now, the problem is that Mokaev has submitted other people who are lower level fighters, and Tim Elliott is, like we said, is a ranked fighter, number 12. They're both either number 12 or 11, and so, you know, they're basically like the same ranking. They're both essentially top 12. And Tim Elliott is a grappler. And Tim Elliott, though, is more of a defensive grappler. Mokaev is more of an offensive grappler. So meaning Mokaev will go after your legs, go forward and get the single leg and take one leg and sweep you, or take both legs and sweep you down. And Tim Elliott more is defensive grappling, meaning he lets somebody go after the punch against him, and then he'll duck under and go for the takedown. When he's in trouble, he'll use the wrestling and the grappling. So I see Mokaev going forward in this fight. I see Tim Elliott backing up, so that already. Mokaev also has really good leg kicks. Tim Elliott's leg kicks are okay, but Mokaev's is better, so Mokaev is going to score points with the leg kicks. Mokaev doesn't really overcommit with punches, obviously, because he's a grappler, so he just does a little 1-2, a good, decent jab, and, you know, I'm sure his striking could develop, but he really just uses it to go for the takedown. So ultimately what I see happening is Mokaev on the outside, going forward, though, but keeping the distance, I mean, is what I meant on the outside, sorry. He's going to keep the distance, you know, when he sees the time is right, go for some punches. Tim Elliott is going to go for some, a duck under takedown. Mokaev will go for a takedown at the same time. So I really just see them kind of stalemating each other. And I see it kind of, it's hard though, because the thing is that Tim Elliott, when he goes against grapplers like he did against Brandon Royval, even though it was, a while ago, he did get subbed, and he got the takedown versus Brandon Royval, but then Brandon Royval was just a stronger grappler, and then he got subbed, and it was only 3 years ago. So, I can't really bet it going the distance. I don't want to bet just Mokaev by submission, just in case Tim Elliott, just ends up being Mokaev hasn't fought that level yet of competition. He only has 4 fights in the UFC. Tim Elliott has been around in the UFC forever. He's been around since 2017, so 6-7 years now. It's just I want to see this fight play out. Ultimately, they both don't really hit with power, so I see it just being grappling, and I just want to see the fight. If it ends up being close, that's where I'm going to kind of jump in with a live bet is what I'm thinking. Yeah, the price is too high for Mokaev. Obviously everyone's high on him. He's 10-0 undefeated, and Tim Elliott is 20-12. So obviously Mokaev deserves to be the favorite, but I see it being a grappling match, and either Mokaev gets that sub quickly, or it just ends up being a greasy fight where it's just back and forth grappling with each other, rolling around. And if that's the case, then I want to probably bet the underdog or something, depending on what's going on in the fight, and just get some good money, maybe $100 to make $200, and then well, this guy's on top, now that guy's on top, and and just maybe bet both guys when they're both underdogs if it ends up being a greasy fight. But no, I understand Mokaev being the favorite, and he probably does get the submission win. And Tim Elliott's been subbed before by other strong grapplers, and Mokaev is a very, very talented grappler, wrestler that can really take you down with singles and double legs. And a lot of respect for Mokaev. So I'm probably just going to stay away from this fight, to be honest. Thank you so much for listening to me droning on about this fight for no particular reason. Me just rambling. I don't know why I'm doing it. So thank you so much again, and please like, subscribe, and comment. I don't know if I deserve it for that fight, but thank you so much for listening again. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We're breaking down and predicting Volkanovski Makhachev 2, the pay-per-view, and this fight is between Nurmagomedov versus Muin Gafurov at 135 pounds. This is backhand. My pick is going to be Nurmagomedov, and Lousy, his pick is also Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov is minus 230, $230 to profit 100, which is actually a great price considering Nurmagomedov is ranked top 15. And Gafurov only has one fight in the UFC, and it's a loss. On top of that, Gafurov also has one Contender Series fight, and that was a loss. And the guy he lost to, Chad Anhelger, actually had some real fights in the UFC, and he's 0-2 in the UFC. So not only did Gafurov lose his one and only fight in the UFC, but the Contender Series fight, which is like the minor leagues for UFC, he lost there. And the guy he lost to, Chad Anhelger, went 0-2 in the UFC. So I don't like that, man, for Gafurov, man. And Nurmagomedov, to be quite honest, is a steal in this fight. Probably the steal of the card, to be quite honest. I'll just say that right now. I love this matchup. I love the price for Nurmagomedov. So just talking about the style matchup really quickly, Muin Gafurov is a guy who stands way too close to his opponent. And I wouldn't mind if he standed very close as long as he was throwing enough punches. But the guy's too hesitant. He's not throwing enough punches to justify standing this close to his opponent. So what kind of opponent would beat Gafurov? A guy who's fast and who's got leg kicks, because Gafurov's legs are there to be kicked, and he's slower than most fighters. And so a speedy fighter who could leg kick you and just run circles around you would beat you. And that's who Nurmagomedov is. Well, that's one thing that Nurmagomedov is great at. Nurmagomedov also has great counter punches, great combinations. His kicks are great overall. His grappling, if you take him down, even like he'll submit you, like he did a couple fights ago. He submitted Sadikov Kakramanov. It was amazing. Subbed him in the second round, even though he's getting repeatedly taken down. He got him in a choke. So that's the whole thing, is that he's so dangerous. And ultimately, Nurmagomedov's record in the UFC is 6-2. However, it's misleading because his last fight against Jonathan Martinez was a loss. So he should be actually 7-1. Right, but the thing is that he's 6-2 because of his last loss against Jonathan Martinez. But a lot of people thought Nurmagomedov won. Nurmagomedov was the favorite against Jonathan Martinez, and he just it was a really close fight in the end. I think there was some cage holding by Martinez and just some knees against the fence and maybe the cage holding time. Now that the judging has changed to damage and things like that, Nurmagomedov probably wins that easily 2-1. But in that time, which was a little bit ago in March of this year, it was still up in the air, and they just gave it to Jonathan Martinez ever so slightly. And guess what Jonathan Martinez did last week? He finished Adrian Yanez with leg kicks in the second round, and Yanez was ranked number 12, and Martinez was ranked number 14 because he took Said Nurmagomedov's number 14 ranking. Now you can clearly see Jonathan Martinez is now ranked number 12, if not number 10 at this point, because of how easily he disposed of Adrian Yanez with those leg kicks. And Said Nurmagomedov was arguably beat Jonathan Martinez. So you could see even Said Nurmagomedov not just as top 15, but really as a top 10 fighter. And in my opinion, he should be a guy who is getting into the top 5 and really fighting, challenging for the belt within the next year and a half. The loss against Jonathan Martinez kind of derailed that, but guess what? Because of that loss, we get a great price here with Said Nurmagomedov, minus 230 versus Muin Gafurov in matchup. So I'm loving the price, everybody. I'm going with Said Nurmagomedov easily, and guess what? Said Nurmagomedov versus Jonathan Martinez in his last fight was the same price. He was like minus 230, $230 to profit $100 against Jonathan Martinez, who's a top 10 fighter, and Muin Gafurov. Not only is he not top 10, not only is he not top 15, Muin Gafurov is 0-1 in his UFC fight. And like I said, if you didn't hear me before, I'll say it again. In the minor leagues, which is the Contender Series, Muin Gafurov has one fight there, and he lost there. And his loss against that guy, Chad Anhelger lost in the UFC and twice. He was 0-2. So Gafurov lost to a losing fighter in the Contender Series, which is the minor leagues, and in the UFC, he has one fight and he lost there by unanimous decision. This is a walk in the park for Said Nurmagomedov, and minus 230 against Gafurov is just like, all right, thanks for the easy money. So I'm just going to say that right there. That is basically my lock. Whatever, what have you, best value bet, it's everything. This is the fight that I'm going to definitely be putting the most money on. Maybe I'll take a loan out. You never know. This is a really, really funny thing that the price is so low, and it's just because he has one loss to Martinez. But other than that, he was Said Nurmagomedov is still 4-1 in his last 5. How do you have him at minus 230? He should be at least minus 450, minus 500. So this is an easy win for Said Nurmagomedov. It's not even my opinion. Just factually, it's like it is my opinion, but factually, just look at the stats. I mean, the wins and losses. Gafurov is 0-1, and Said is 6-2, and he's a ranked fighter, top 15. Come on, this is a joke. So thank you so much for listening. Hope everybody enjoys the fight, and please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. This is our breakdown and prediction of Volkanovski Makhachev 2. This fight is between Ikram Aliskerov versus Warlley Alves at middleweight, 185 pounds. This is Backhand. My pick is Ikram Aliskerov. Lousey's pick is also Ikram Aliskerov, and we're both thinking that he gets it done with either a KO or a submission. So the bet for both of us is going to be Ikram Aliskerov double chance bet, which is right next in the winning method in the winning method tab for the double chance. So you can get Ikram Aliskerov by KO or submission. Hopefully the price is okay. It's crazy. Aliskerov is minus 600. It's $600 to profit 100 on Aliskerov straight up. So that's way too expensive, hence the double chance bet. The price got to be right, though, right? It's got to be something like minus 250, 250 to profit 100. And we'll see what the price changes to right before the fight. So we'll see about that. But ultimately, it's a middleweight fight, and Warlley Alves, his opponent, is a 170-pounder. He's a welterweight. He's moving up to middleweight to fight Aliskerov. So this is insane because Warlley Alves is a fighter he's a good fighter. He's a good kickboxer and everything, but he's 1-3 in his last 4. And he's been stopped twice with submission and KO 2 fights ago versus Jeremiah Wells. And then he's going to move up against a monster like Aliskerov. That's why the odds are so crazy for Aliskerov. It's so expensive for Aliskerov to bet him to win, because Aliskerov is not only does he only have one loss, and that's to Khamzat Chimaev, who we all know is a rock star in the UFC now with so many finishes, but Aliskerov is a guy who, in his last 8 wins, 7 out of 8 wins have come by KO or submission. So he's a finisher. He's a monster. He had one fight in the Contender Series, which is the minor leagues, and he had a submission win in the first round in 2 minutes against Mario Sousa. And then his last fight, it was actually in the UFC versus Phil Hawes, who's a pretty respectable fighter, and he KO'd Phil Hawes in the first in 2 minutes and 10 seconds in the first round. So he's a KO and submission monster. You don't know how he's going to do it, but he's going to do it against Warlley Alves. Warlley Alves is 1-3 in his last 4, and 2 fights ago against Jeremiah Wells, Warlley Alves got KO'd by Jeremiah Wells, who's slower than Aliskerov and less power than Aliskerov, and he still knocked out Warlley Alves inside 2 rounds and really 30 seconds into that second round. So Warlley Alves is susceptible to the KO, susceptible to the submission as well. 4 fights ago, he got submitted by Randy Brown, who's not even a submission artist. Randy Brown is a kickboxer with great kicks. So he's a KO guy, and he got submitted by a KO guy. So, man, this is not good for Warlley Alves. On top of everything, I mean, I hate to pile on Warlley Alves. This is sad but he's got a 4-inch reach disadvantage against Ikram Aliskerov in this fight. That's huge. Man, everything's going against him. He's moving up in weight against the wrong opponent. I feel bad for Warlley Alves in this fight. He's got a 4-inch reach disadvantage. He's got the weight disadvantage. He's got the age disadvantage. Oh, I mean, he's 32 and Aliskerov is 30, but still, he's also got Aliskerov as a southpaw. He's a lefty, so it's even more trouble because lefties are more rare. So Alves has to now train for a lefty, train for a guy who's longer than him, train for a guy who's bigger than him, train for a guy who can KO or sub him. It all spells doom for Warlley Alves. Kind of feel bad for him here. On top of everything, Warlley Alves only has 1 takedown average per fight, and Aliskerov has 3 takedowns per fight on average. So he just loses in every way, whether it's submission or TKO or KO. It's going to happen, and we're thinking it happens in a finish. It just matters about the price. We want it to be somewhat profitable so that it's a good risk reward. That's why I'm just waiting for after they weigh in. Hopefully it's around -200, -250, maybe even -300. Just because I think I just talked myself into really wanting to bet this bet, and definitely want to throw it on a parlay. It's just one of those things where Aliskerov is, like I said, only lost to 1 fight to Khamzat Chimaev, who we all know is a finisher in the UFC and who's fighting on this co-main event on this card pay-per-view. And it's going to be an exciting fight, though, still, because both these guys, Ikram Aliskerov and Warlley Alves, are kickboxers, so it's going to be very entertaining from start to finish. I see it being a fight that could end easily in the first round just because Aliskerov is so much bigger, and he's just faster punches, faster kicks, better shots, better strike selection than Warlley Alves, just better awareness in there, knows when to turn on the heat and really go for the finish, and then knows when to keep the distance. Just Aliskerov's a monster in there, and he's a thinking monster, and Warlley Alves is a guy who's been finished 1 out of, in his last 4 fights, he's been finished twice, and he's 1-3 in his last 4 at 170 pounds, and he's moving up to 185. I don't know why this is happening. I feel bad for the guy. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. And please like, subscribe, and comment for that YouTube algo. Thank you so much. Hey, We've Been Drinking MMA. We're breaking down and predicting Volkanovski Makhachev 2. And this fight is between Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. This is a fight that people are, I think I'm excited to watch this fight, man. It's a light heavyweight fight on this pay-per-view, 205 pounds. My tentative pick is Magomed Ankalaev. This is backhand. And Lousy's pick is also Magomed Ankalaev. However, I don't want to bet Ankalaev. What I see happening is that it goes all 3 rounds, which I know sounds a little bit crazy since these guys can really finish people and they're dangerous strikers, both of them. However, I think it's gonna be in their head that they don't want to really throw too many punches with each other because of the fear of the knockout. So ultimately, you look at the records too. Johnny Walker in his last 3 is a KO, a submission, and a decision. But his last fight against Anthony Smith this year, it was a decision. It's because he's not throwing the punches the way he used to. He's not being reckless, and he's just really throwing a lot of leg kicks, and which is smart. Anyone of his opponents who is going to be standing close to him, why throw punches when they're there to be kicked on their legs? Why not aim for their legs and just back away? Because if you throw a punch, you're going to get countered because they're standing too close. And Magomed Ankalaev, his opponent in this fight, stands too close, in my opinion. And it's just facts, because Magomed Ankalaev in his last fight versus Jan Blachowicz a year ago, he stood way too close, and that's why Jan Blachowicz just kicked his leg for like 3 rounds, and scored all of his points basically through leg kicks. And then in the fourth and fifth, Magomed Ankalaev took Blachowicz down after Blachowicz hurt his foot from throwing too many leg kicks. And then, so Ankalaev got the takedowns, and then it ended up being a draw for the belt at 205. So that was crazy. So Ankalaev is essentially an uncrowned champion here because a lot of people thought he won. It was a draw, unfortunately, for him. So, but it was a close fight, And anyways, in this fight, if you look at it, Walker, even though his last 3 fights he's had 2 finishes and 1 decision, but his very last fight, he's really turned into a leg kicker, which is really smart, like I said. So he's going to be leg kicking all night. And Ankalaev is a guy who stands too close, and so Walker's going to be just kicking the leg. Why is Walker going to take a chance of getting counterpunch knocked out when he's changed camps 2 or 3 fights ago, and now he's changed into more of a counterpunching leg kicker instead of an aggressive fighter who gets KO'd by the counter? Now he's countering and staying on the outside and just leg kicking. He's a phenomenal athlete, good speed, and he can use that against Ankalaev, who's a slightly slower fighter. So ultimately, the speed factor goes to Johnny Walker. The leg kicks are going to be there. And the counterpunching, he'll just stay on the outside and counter here and there. But the problem is Ankalaev has a bigger arsenal, if you will. He can kick, he can punch, he can counterpunch, and he can also take you down and hold you down like he did with Blachowicz the last fourth and fifth round. He just held him down for like 5 minutes on one of the rounds. It was crazy. So ultimately, Magomed Ankalaev, I see him really not committing to too many punches because he's going to be afraid of Johnny Walker's counterpunch KO power, because Walker is a dangerous fighter. So I see Ankalaev throwing more kicks, going for takedowns, things like that, and his ground and pound is not that great. Proof of that is that in Magomed Ankalaev's last 5 fights, 4 of them have been decisions. So 4 out of 5 fights, his last 4 fights have gone to decision. He's had 1 KO over Anthony Smith. And Anthony Smith, we know, is a guy who stands very close, and Walker is not standing very close anymore. So Walker is going to be keeping on the outside, leg kicking. Magomed Ankalaev has proven that he goes to decision 4 out of his last 5 fights. They are against ranked fighters, but guess what? Johnny Walker's a ranked fighter, and Johnny Walker is as dangerous, if not dangerous, than any one of those fighters who Magomed Ankalaev has faced in his last 5 fights. So I believe it's going to be neutralized. It's going the distance. So that's going to be my bet, is going all 3 rounds. I hope it's going to be a good price. I think it will, because they both have that monster type label on them, and I just think that they're both evolving and Ankalaev literally is turning into a decision fighter when he fights top 10 fighters, and Johnny Walker is, you could just see, he's turning into a smarter fighter who doesn't want to commit to being aggressive, and just wants to counter punch and be on the outside and just leg kick you because he's faster than everybody. His leg kicks are better than everybody's. Why not just do that and get some guaranteed wins, right? So thank you so much for listening, and please like, subscribe, comment for that algo. Thank you. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We are predicting and breaking down the Volkanovski Makhachev 2 pay-per-view card. This is the co-main event. This is Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev at 185 pounds. This is going to be a very interesting fight. This is backhand. My pick is going to be Khamzat Chimaev, and Lousy's pick is also Khamzat Chimaev. Chimaev is minus $280 to profit $100. The one thing about this fight, though, is I don't want to bet Chimaev before the fight. What I'm waiting for, because Kamaru Usman is such a legend at 170 pounds, he was a champion there, pound for pound #1 in the UFC for a year or so, and then he lost the belt to Edwards in his last 2 fights ago, right? But Usman didn't look that great in his last fight, but he could be going through some injuries, and now he might have been healed up. It's hard to say, and that's why he didn't look as good. Usman has a 1-inch reach advantage over Chimaev. That's troubling, because Usman has a better jab than Chimaev. On top of that, Usman has proven, obviously, that he's an amazing fighter who defended his belt. I don't know how many times, but he beat quality opponents, obviously. Masvidal knocked him out, Gilbert Burns, all those people. So, he's got, like 5 title defenses, unbelievable against really great fighters. Colby Covington, beat him twice. Even TKO'd him once. So, ultimately you got to give credit to Kamaru Usman, even though Kamaru Usman is a 170-pound champ, and he's moving up to 185 pounds, which is kind of insane on 1 week notice as well. That's why the pick is Chimaev, ultimately, is that Chimaev has been training for this fight at 185 pounds, and he's ready for 185 pounds. Chimaev used to fight at 170. He's been at 185, I think, against Holland in his last fight as well. And this is his second fight at 185, I think. So Chimaev is ready. He's 29 years old, in his prime. Kamaru Usman is 36 years old, getting out of his prime maybe. But you got to give credit to Usman, is that, he's always there in a fight. He's got that jab. He's got the wrestling, and he's got that tough chin. Thing is that Chimaev is faster than him. Chimaev arguably has better wrestling, at least offensive wrestling, as far as the chain wrestling. He can punch to the takedown very quickly. Chimaev he throws in combinations versus Usman is more of a 1-2 guy and then a jab. So it's arguable who has the better offense. I would say Usman's more of a guy who can jab you and more tools in the arsenal. Chimaev's a little bit more aggressive with the combinations. So that's going to be fun to see play out. But ultimately, Usman has better defense. Usman has better head movement. Chimaev really doesn't move his head because Chimaev is super aggressive, and that's what's crazy about him. Is Usman usually goes forward and pressures everybody, and so does Chimaev, but Chimaev pressures more than Usman. So it's going to be very fun to see the fight. Two pressure fighters, two come forward fighters, and Chimaev pressures even faster. He's faster than Usman. The offense is going to be interesting with Chimaev with the combinations, Usman with the better jab. It's fun to think about, But for me, the reason I want to bet, I'll do a live bet, is because you got to give credit to Usman. Even though he's taking this fight on 1 week notice and he's moving up to 185, you have to look at it, the fact that he's a legend. He might have been injured in his last fight. That's why he didn't move very well. And you just got to give him credit, for what he's done. And that's why I think minus $280 a profit on Chimaev is just too expensive, in my opinion, with a fight where Usman has a 1-inch reach advantage and the better jab. And he's very competent in the grappling and the wrestling. Obviously, we know Usman's wrestling background. But Chimaev ultimately is undefeated, 12-0. And I want to wait for the fight to get close. And I think it could be a close fight. And if it does get kind of close because Usman has the reach advantage and the better jab and the better IQ, definitely, to be quite honest. Chimaev just, is walking into punches, but he's throwing combinations and wrestling you. But Usman, it times you better. And that's why Usman has a better IQ. I think it's going to be a lot closer fight. So if it's in the third round, second round, late in the second, and Chimaev it's a closer fight, like let's say Chimaev takes the first round, Usman takes the second. In the third round, it's like 50-50. People are like, oh, damn, we shouldn't have bet on Chimaev. That's when I might just take a bet on Chimaev just because I know that he can switch to the wrestling. He's faster than Usman. He's bigger, naturally bigger. He's in his prime. And it's just going to be fun to see the fight, though, take place. So please like, subscribe, comment for this for the YouTube algo, and look forward to doing the recap. So please look out for that because this fight's going to be a barn burner from start to finish. Thank you so much for Kamaru Usman for taking this fight on 1 week notice. He's a true champion and just an unbelievable fighter, unbelievable heart for doing this. It's just going to be a hell of a fight because these guys like to hit hard and they like to come forward. So thanks again. Like, subscribe, and comment, please, for that YouTube algo. Thank you. Hey, this is We've Been Drinking MMA. We're here. This is it. This is the main event. We're breaking down and predicting the main event of this pay-per-view, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski for the 155-pound lightweight championship belt in the UFC. My pick, this is backhand, my pick is going to be Islam Makhachev, tentatively a little bit, and backhand's pick is also, Lousy's pick is also Islam Makhachev. Only reason I say tentatively, it's not actually even that tentatively, it's just that the price is minus 280 for Makhachev to win, so it's minus 260. I think it keeps changing. $260 to profit, $100 on Islam Makhachev. But for me, we know they fought before. This is the rematch. And that's why, in my humble opinion, my bet is I'm thinking it's going the distance, like it did last time. Because both fighters are so smart. Their IQs are so good. They're quick around the pocket, so they never get into too much danger. Obviously, Volkanovski knocked down Makhachev in the 5th round, and Makhachev knocked down Volkanovski in the 1st round. But I don't see it really happening. I think they know each other now, and they're really going to be even more conservative. But the thing is, I see it going the distance because of that. So my bet is really going to be that it goes either over 4 rounds or just that it goes all 5 rounds, goes the distance. It could be a good price. It's unbelievable. Volkanovski has defended his belt at 145 pounds 5 times, including his last fight with Yahya Rodriguez, where he TKO'd him in the 3rd round. And it's unbelievable. And then you got Makhachev, who's on this 12-fight win streak. And 4 out of his last 5, it's 5 out of his last 6 fights have come by finish. Submitted his opponents and even TKO'd Bobby Green. But yeah, Volkanovski with the decision, he had a decision win over Volkanovski in his last fight, and that's what I see happening again, because basically Okay. Volkanovski is a guy who's just too smart. He's got too good head movement, and now he got knocked down, a flash knockdown in the first round where he just decided to go punch on the run, and he wanted to test Makhachev, and Makhachev just, angled away a little bit and just boom, a quick little combination back, and Volkanovski got quickly dropped, and Volkanovski was a lot smarter the rest of the fight. So ultimately, Volkanovski knows that even though Makhachev is more of a grappler, he's known for his grappling. Like, Volkanovski now realizes that Makhachev Volkanovski is definitely the faster fighter. He's the lighter fighter, smaller fighter, and he's the faster fighter. But now Volkanovski knows that Makhachev, even though he might be slower, he's very quick around the pocket. And that's what really matters in mixed martial arts, right? You might be slower than your opponent, but when someone, when you engage and you exchange, when you're in the pocket and you can make those slight quick maneuvers inside the pocket and get out of the way to the left, get out of the way to the right, and then counter, that's actually what matters. It doesn't always matter who the fastest fighter is. Otherwise, we would always see the fastest fighter always winning, and that doesn't always happen, right? So in this fight, even though Volkanovski does have the speed factor, Makhachev is quicker around the pocket. Even though Volkanovski, has admittedly better angles and combination punching, Makhachev is shown that he's a more effective counterpuncher because he counterpunch knocked down Volkanovski. So Volkanovski is better with the combinations going forward. Makhachev is better with the counterpunching. Volkanovski is faster than Makhachev with the footwork, but then Makhachev is quicker around the pocket, right? So you look at offense, it's neutralized. You look at the speed factor, it's neutralized. You look at the defense, both of them have some decent head movement. Makhachev is quick around the pocket. Like I said, Volkanovski's got maybe the slicker head movement, but that's kind of like they both are good at defense, right? So then what it comes down to, in my opinion, is the grappling. And Makhachev, when he goes forward, that's the problem, is that Volkanovski is thinking it's either a punch, kick, or, of course, the takedown. Versus when Volkanovski comes forward, it's like just the punch or the kick. And Makhachev, we know, is much more effective than I ever thought at counterpunching. And he's phenomenal in that little quick pocket, angling off to the side so he doesn't get hit and then sets a trap. Makhachev is a master trapper. And that's what I believe he'll do to Volkanovski again with the counterpunching game. And then when he wants to go ahead and throw some fake punches at Volkanovski going forward against Volkanovski will be running away, kind of, not running away, but like, backing up, and he's going to have to use more energy going back. Makhachev's going to be feinting, and then Volkanovski's going to be like, what is he going to do? And then he goes for the takedown instead of a punch or a kick. It's going to be just too much for Volkanovski, in my opinion. But Volkanovski's heart of a lion, stepping up on 1 week notice in this fight. I'm so excited for this fight. We're going to do order the pay-per-view, doing the recaps on Saturday. So please come back on Saturday and Sunday when our recaps are out, and just, have fun with this fight if you're ordering it. I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight, as far as now we get to see two absolute amazing champions, in their primes, that are going against each other. It's history, and it's a beautiful fight. Can't wait for it. Again, both our picks are Islam Makhachev, but ultimately we do feel that they kind of neutralize each other a lot. Makhachev has the grappling, which we believe will be the difference maker in the end. But so the bet is going to be going all 5 rounds, going the distance. But ultimately, just fans of this fight and just going to enjoy it. And thank you so much for listening. And please like, subscribe, and comment for this YouTube algo. Thank you so much.